So what happens is there's this messaging that tells us to work incredibly hard, produce incredible content. Don't talk about it too much. Get letters behind your name. Networking, get letters behind your name. And don't really start something. Instead, just work within the system.
Okay, guys, welcome to the BloomX podcast. Today we have a great shout out to mention. Shout out to MCRO for becoming a continuing sponsor for the podcast. So this episode and future episodes is going to be brought to you by MCRO, who enables businesses to grow through handcrafted digital solutions of the future. MCRO is a web and mobile app development studio with a competent, dedicated, and experienced team focused on solving business challenges through fast-to-market and producing high-performance digital products. If you're looking to turn your destructive ideas into reality or have a reliable strategic tech partner to explore options with for your existing work or for new work, reach out to us and we'll make the introduction for MCRO, and you can have the conversation over coffee or a Bone Shaker IPA, your choice.
Perfect. And we're on. Manjula, thank you for joining us. This is an episode I really wanted to do. I know we've been talking back and forth a lot about getting this on. And really want to give you a shout out too. When I first started talking about wanting to do this podcast, you're one of the first people I reached out to.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Right? Just to validate the idea. I mean, I remember last year we had a call. You called me out of the blue just to ask about an idea you had, and I talked with some of my ideas. And when we started this podcast, I think it was in May of 2018. I just called you and asked, it's like, I'm doing this thing just to validate, right? Like, how would you go by this? And you've been on air talking on CBC Radio about tech, about so many different aspects. But now you're on the tech show. But we've known each other for so long now.
For so long. My goodness. I was actually trying to figure out how I know you, but it's so many ways, right? Mm-hmm. Family, friends, business things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will just say this, first of all.
Yeah.
I actually remember that conversation.
Okay.
And I remember telling you, I said, start small. Don't worry about it. Everyone aims for perfection, but just start. And then I remember watching your first few episodes. I was like, wow, when he starts, he just, like, this is fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
It's a lovely set. It's a professional outfit, but just congratulations. And you know what? I always say to people, get your content out. But and people don't.
Yeah.
And people don't do it consistently. And they give up after a bit. And you've been you and the team have been hitting it out in stride.
Yeah.
Which I know isn't easy. So congrats to you.
Thank you so much. And I like you hit it right there when you said like get your content out.
Absolutely.
I followed that so much.
Yeah.
Because we as a team will argue a lot about should it look like this? What should the edit look like this? We're not happy with this video. Should we do it again? And I'm like, no, let's just get out there.
Yes.
Get it out there. Let the people decide if they like it or not, and we'll get the feedback from them. Right? Use it to build up for the next time. Now repeat those mistakes or make things better. And it's been an iterative process.
I do find it takes time, though. Like I have to say that I produce a lot of content as a journalist.
Yeah.
And I can't say right now I'm the best at getting it out. Like sometimes I'll look at Twitter and go, oh my goodness, I haven't tweeted in like 3-4 days, but I've worked on all of these stories.
Yeah.
That it's hard to get it out. And I have to, as a practice, I'm hoping in 2020 to get into it. But I would advocate for people, if you want to be known as an expert in something, or if you want to get the word out about what you already do, you have to put out content. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be, I know people make fun of blogs, but they work. Newsletters are amazing.
Yep.
Podcasts are amazing. But get it out, because someone or a group of people, that demographic that really care about your work, will find you.
Yep.
Right? Otherwise, how are people going to know? What, you expect them to believe that you are an expert in this? Like after watching a couple of your podcasts, I get a sense of this is what you guys are good at. I can understand that you have that you understand the bottom of the funnel. You understand the sales funnel. Well, how am I supposed to know that, even though I've known you for a while, Ravi? It's interesting because through watching the podcast, I now know a bit more about you and your understanding of the funnel than I did before at all of those sort of like cocktail parties or functions.
Absolutely.
Right? Isn't that strange?
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, because that's part of what we do this podcast so much about, is get our ideas about what's going on in the world and how we can help out there, right? So everyone I always asks, like, why are you a podcaster? What is this podcast for? How many followers do you have? And I'm like, you know what? The followers are the extra. What it really is a platform really to have long-form conversations with people like your capacity founders who come in through this the podcast, investors, and really dive down into what's actually happening in the world around us. And I mean, one of the things I appreciate about your content as well is that how broad you are in covering different aspects of today's biggest topics. And I mean, I just want to take back to, like, you've been doing this for a while, right? So let's get back to about you, right? Like, what got you into this? Like,
It's a switch.
yeah,
It's a
right?
switch. It's like so I strongly believe in networking. I have coffees with a ton of people throughout the year. And the number one question that I have with people, like I try 4 times a month to have coffee with people that I've never had coffee with before, right? And the number one question I get is, why did you switch from working in the startup world to journalism? So I'll very quickly say that story. I was working with a startup called Eloqua, a job that I absolutely loved. I was their VP of marketing. It was a demand gen role, which meant that it's not the kind of marketing where you can imagine ads and think about how you can employ agencies. It's like, no. Every quarter you have a number. And then you have to sit down with the SVP of sales and say, as a marketer, that marketing budget that I was given, here is how much I am driving to hand over to you so that you can work with it in the middle of the funnel and close it at the bottom of the funnel. It is marketing with like numbers. It's very quantifiable. And so
it's almost sales-driven marketing.
It's totally sales-driven marketing. I loved it. I loved the job. I loved the company. I was employee number 13 there. I was there for between 8 to 10 years. It all fades now. Amazing company. And I got to the point where my husband had a very busy job. I had a very busy job. I'm very frank about this. And we had been trying for a while to start a family. And it just wasn't working out for us. And doctors, let's say, would say, you just need to kind of relax. You just need to maybe take some time out. And so I decided to actually leave the company, which was very hard for me to do. It was like leaving a baby. They were very kind to me. I don't know if this happens now, but the execs of the company, the co-founders, try to find ways. They're like, let's have you working from home. Do you want to take a sabbatical? I'm like, a sabbatical at a startup? What are you talking about? I'm going to tell you that's ridiculous. But they were extremely kind to me. I should name them because they are kind of a bit of a legend in the Toronto startup community, and for me personally as well. Abe Wagner, Mark Organ, and Steve Woods, two of whom have now gone on to start other companies. So I did leave, and what happened is that company about 2 to 3 years after actually was bought over by Oracle, and then I had an IPO and did really well, a great unicorn story. And so I was in this. I had imagined that I would come back to tech, but I was caught in this little space where I was raising, and of course, the moment stress left my life, I became pregnant and had an awesome child, right? We like to call her the $1 million baby. So what was funny is I was sitting around and thinking, what could I do next? Like, I could go back into tech. I absolutely love what I was doing. I love demand gen marketing. I love talking sales and marketing. But I thought, at that time, I was volunteering with a couple of charitable organizations, non-for-profit organizations in the city. One of them was working with refugees. 2 boats of migrant Tamils had landed on the shores of Canada. And the rhetoric around those migrants was so dreadful. I got caught up in this story. I started helping organizations write press releases about them, and that quickly moved to me doing media interviews. In something like a 4-day span about those boats of refugees, I did something like 20 or 25 interviews. And really, I kept thinking the focus during those interviews was to convince people that these people are not terrorists, all we want to do is give them the benefit of the doubt. And I heard that message going across because I met journalists who didn't understand the story but were willing to listen to me. And some of them would say, you're actually speaking to us in a language we can understand. Have you ever considered journalism? And it was like dropped into my brain. So I gave it a try. I went to study it. I thought I'll give it like 2 months of studying it. If I hate it, I'm leaving. Loved it. Loved writing. Didn't think I would love radio. Loved radio. Got hired at CBC. It's now been 5 years, right? And a couple of the things that I do at CBC is I started off as a producer for Metro Morning, which is the number one most listened to show in Toronto. Fabulous current affairs show, not just in the GTA, but across the country, hosted by an amazing man who just left the role, Matt Galloway, who was also very kind to me. And then from that, I got approached to do a national tech column, which I do across the country. So I pick an interesting tech topic, but not just a random topic, a topic that affects Canadians on a day-to-day basis. And so that airs on 26 shows across the country. And they've been also very kind to allow me to step in as a guest host on our one of our Ontario shows, which is called Fresh Air. So I cover tech, but I also cover issues like transit, politics, education, but also like, are you going to go mushroom picking? Are you stressing out over the holidays? The range of it. So I would have to say I'm incredibly blessed, but there's no way, Ravi, that if I didn't have that startup career, I would, those folks are still in my life, by the way, but I would have the confidence, because after you work in a startup for a while, you think you can do anything, which is good and bad. We can get into that later. But I would have the confidence, I would have the understanding of Toronto or the skill set to be able to do what I do now or what I'm going to do next.
So that you gave us a lot of information
Sorry,
right there.
That was the short version.
Yeah, no, 100%. I completely agree. I mean, someone of your caliber has went through so much, and the fact you can shorten it, right, showcases your ability to communicate, right, your achievements, and that itself is great. But I mean, let's go back to that, right? The startup grind early on. I mean, it seems like you started at this great company, this fast-moving, fast-paced, where a lot of you're empowered to learn and act. And right at the time where you're like the most productive in your life, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of lined up.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about how you got into that startup, right?
Okay.
Like, where did that come from? Like, did you want to always start in a company that's like new and forming? Or where did you get pulled into it and you know the founders? What was the story?
Okay. So I'm going to say this, that one of the co-founders was a friend that I'd worked with at a company before, a small consulting company in Toronto. A couple of the other people on that first list of 13 of the founding team were people I knew as well.
Yeah.
So when I came in, there were 12 people at the company. The CEO had met me at a party and given me a business card which had serrated edges. It's just so you don't think that I joined some fancy company. I'll be honest with you, when I saw a demo of the product, I told the two co-founders, what the ... is this? I thought it was a dreadful product. But here's the difference, and this is one thing that I follow throughout my life. 3 of them were really smart and really focused. I only work with people smarter than me, right? Okay. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, the product is not great, but I believe in these people, and they're super intelligent, super hardworking, have interesting backstories. And that was it. That was the choice. And the reason I made a choice to go into startups is I was a senior consultant at a consulting firm. It's an American consulting firm. They had an arm here. They were called March 1st. And I started feeling like I was hitting a bit of a glass ceiling where it was like, you need a ton of expertise to make it to the next level. You need a ton of expertise to be able to do this. And then I thought, oh my goodness, why don't I consider a startup? But I made that decision when the startup market blew up. Yeah. But I ran into these guys and I thought, I believe in them. I've worked with them. I know they work hard. And that was it. And so it was like a decision made over 1 week. Yeah. And because they're smart people and other hardworking people gravitated towards them, the product went from a chat product for websites to becoming a marketing tool that allows CMOs and their teams to build amazing nurturing campaigns, demand generation campaigns to drive like specific leads into the top of your funnel. Can you imagine that started a chat product? But that's what intelligent people do. They're able to pivot to get you to that amazing product. So let me tell you what it was when I was employee number 13 was not what I envisioned. But I knew another thing, and I know that you're going to talk to a lot of founders. I'm not a founder, but I was part of the early founding team.
Yeah.
So what I will say to people is you don't always have to be a founder. You can find smart people like you and work for people like you. And then what happens is that even if the startup doesn't go anywhere, and a lot of startups don't, you become an incredible leader. So what then happened to me from that day is as the product's trajectory became amazing, I also learned skills, because this is how you learn a skill. Someone goes, oh, we need a marketing team. Can you figure that out? I don't think I've run a marketing team. I'm sure you can figure it out, right? Like that's how you learn.
Yeah.
Imagine that kind of skill.
Yeah.
So then you learn as an employee at a faster rate. And good founders trust you with that stuff, and they manage you the right way, and they mentor you the right way. That's what you need to find. So I'm going to tell people, everyone out there wants to be a magical founder. Let me tell you, you can be a phenomenal founding employee or an employee. And let me tell you, even if that company goes nowhere, you're going to leave. Like I could have left, and I could have probably got hired. For a while after, when I was on a break, I would get offers from people saying, do you want to come on as a VP of marketing or VP of demand gen? Because they knew what I had done before. That was over like no time.
Yeah.
Right? So again, so I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't this magical company that I joined. It became that.
I mean, that's really interesting. Like, so I'll tell you what this interests me, that story, right? Like as a founder, when you go to hire smart, intelligent people, you gotta provide them something, a kick that they can't find traditionally,
Yes.
right? I mean, that's the reason why they're there. Like you want for your baby, this new company, the smartest, most energetic, the most like hardest hitting people you can possibly find. Problem is, how do you compete with like the Fortune 500 companies,
Yes.
right? These big companies, the existing process that can get plugged into and have security from. And you gotta hit them where the growth is.
Yes.
Provide them with that ability to be like, lead this. Okay, run this, right?
I agree. I mean, I'll tell you, for sure, I had shares, I had stock options, I had all of that stuff. But you know what really made a difference to me is our CEO telling me, I'd like to have you lead, I'd like to have you one day become a CMO at a Fortune 500 company. Do you know what it's like for a girl in her 20s who's left a consulting company where there's a glass ceiling to hear that? I mean, you have stock options, you have shares. Really? Is there any monetary value there?
Yeah.
You've halved your salary, if not far less than that, leaving. But when someone says that to you and says, you're going to work away and I'm investing in you, would have conversations with you. You need to become a better public speaker. You need to manage your people better. What can we do? We might not have a training budget. How can I help you? And be very harsh with you. In a startup, there isn't the nice sandwich. Like when I did something dreadful, it would be, our CEO would say, that was terrible. So it's like someone's ripping the Band-Aids, but they're giving you this opportunity to grow, right? And I think that's what founders need to offer their people. And it can't be just talk. You need to look at the people working with for you and say, even if I disappear and this company disappears, how can I ensure that these people are in line for the C-suite in 10 years? How can I make it happen with the limited resources you have? Well, I have connections. I have, I have my own learnings. I have opportunities that I can present to them within the company. That's what you need to do, right? And that, trust me, will attract people who have a great salary because they're hitting bureaucracy everywhere else.
No, I mean, as like a growth, as a person focused on growth, I mean, this is what resonates with me as well. Like I ended up founding companies because like I couldn't find the solution that fit, right? But a lot of professionals who join startups, like you said, they either come for the problem, right? We believe in that problem, we believe in that vision, or they believe in the founder, or they believe themselves, and they need a place where they can grow and foster. and that's why like startups have been a place for like high performing people to go into, right, and succeed from too. So that's a unique perspective you provide. Usually we think about startups as like people who go something you do when you don't want to do traditional work.
Yeah, but that's
Right.
not it. It's a great place. I mean, you can even plan it out and say, I have a period of my life that I want to do a tremendous amount of hard work, but I want that directly proportional to the growth in my career and hopefully a good exit. But the exit, there's a very low chance of that. But you know that the growth in your career is possible. So if you've got 5 years, if you've got a runway of 8 years in your personal life before, I don't know, you want to start a family or who knows, you want to go back into the consulting world or into the corporate world and do something else, take that runway, and even if it's 3 years, even if it's 8 years, invest it with smart people at their startup, and you will see the growth in your career. I can almost guarantee you that.
Absolutely. Cool. So let's digest the part of the career that came afterwards, like going into media. That's really how I know you from.
Yeah.
And so just that tidbit I want to take back to what you share with us. Like your media career kind of started with you standing up for what happened in the Tamil struggle, right? With the people that came by boat here. That's interesting because that's something like, as being a Tamil, you can never get away from. It's part of our core identity.
It is, yeah.
Is our combined struggle. And as a diaspora spread across the world, it's also a strength, right?
Yeah.
Because you standing up for the community and sharing your knowledge and your abilities at that time led you to be able to share your voices for other things that matter as well.
Yeah.
Right? That was your spiral effect.
Yeah.
Right? So can it be fair to assume that it was never your intention really to become a journalist, but it became a tool for you to exercise your opinions?
If you had told me, like, I don't know, 10 years ago that I would be a journalist, I'd be like, what are you talking about, right? But I've noticed that I have these moments of clarity at certain points in my life. Like when I told you I had the sense that I was hitting the glass ceiling, I have such clarity and I'm able to choose a path, right? And it was the same thing here. It was like I had this clarity, I had this vision, and then it was 100% of my effort is going to go into that, and I want to end up at a mainstream publication. I want to end up at the Torstar or the Globe and Mail. Of course, when I started studying it, I just fell in love with broadcast, and that's where I ended up. So pretty much about a couple of months in, I thought, I want to be at our public broadcaster. And I've been so blessed because of amazing mentors and sponsors at CBC to end up in such a role. But I do think that we have to be very cognizant of things in our life that push us in directions. And so now I'm going to say something that I warn people about. Sometimes people hear my story and they think, I had an epiphany too. You're right. That's it. I'm going to start a bakery, right? It's like, whoa, right?
Yeah. That's impulsive behavior.
There is a difference.
Yeah.
There's a difference. I would say that when possible, I had certain resources available to me, financial resources available to me. So I was able to make a switch like this, right? And know that I'm okay financially, right? But I would say to people that if you're going to make a switch like that, know that it can be very hard on your finances, on your ego, on everything else to start again. When possible, make a lateral move and be careful that epiphany isn't just, I'm just stressed out at work. I'm having a midlife crisis, whatever it is, because I'll tell you, I meet people constantly in this new career in journalism who have had, they started out as an accountant, gave up, went on to start their own startup, they start multiple things, but they don't stick through the hard times. And in every career that you do, even at a startup, Ravi, you know this very well, that the stuff at the start, when you start, is 80% tedious and awful and 20% of good strategic stuff.
Yeah.
And it's only as you get deeper and deeper into the career that it reverses itself. Don't keep quitting when you are at that 80%. So sometimes I meet people that have this epiphany, hear my story and go, yeah, I should switch too. It's like, no, you need to really meet with a whole bunch of people, talk to them, and think about if you're making the right decision.
Yeah.
And if you have the skills, the finances, if that place is going to present opportunities. And I say this because I went from a place where tech is opening up, tech was like, it's just killing it in Toronto. Toronto's just growing. And I moved into a field that is actually kind of dying.
Yeah.
But I knew that I had a certain level of skill, certain level of support, so I could do this. So I'm going to say that when you have that epiphany, think through it. Don't just jump into things.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's really important too. I mean, there's really two types of founders we talk about on the show a lot.
Okay.
So let me hear your thoughts on this, right? So founders fall in kind of a spectrum: visionaries versus like operators, right? So operators are systematic thinkers, right? High-end professionals who have developed something, they found a problem they can solve, and they systematically go out and build a vehicle that can solve that problem.
Yeah.
Right. Now, visionaries get obsessed. They see, the mountaintop, what could be, right? Or, or fear something, or like are chased by something that pushes them to develop that. They're more emotional based.
Yes.
And
helps if you have both. I'm guessing.
it helps. Yeah. So most people fall on some kind of
co-founders.
It's a spectrum. They follow one thing. And the dangerous thing is when people get too emotionally involved, right? When they're a visionary, they get obsessed by their idea. It can be a benefactor, but it can also be a curse because it gets closed in a bubble.
Yeah.
But in a sense, like, I think there's two things. You either have to, like, especially depending on the risk, depending on the company or a thing you're doing, right? Like entrepreneurship wise, if you're doing something safe like a bakery, like where it's like, okay, there's already a systematic way of doing this. You're just kind of plugging yourself in and changing a certain process. But let's say like a tech company, where it's a massive scale of a process, where potential for hundreds of thousands, hundreds of millions of dollars there on the table. That's a market you're going after. There's really two kind of ways of looking at it, right? You either have to love the problem you're trying to solve.
Yes.
You have to be emotionally attached to that.
Yes.
So that's your guiding light. Or you got to hate the problem so much that it's such a
That's
pain
actually a
that you
really
want
good way to put it. Yeah.
right? So these two guiding emotions, one or two or a mix of them, has to be there, especially as a beginning founder or even a founding team, as you mentioned before, to guide you through this. Because again, the tediousness of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of work, the amount of things that need to be done, the amount of roadblocks that might be there.
Yes.
You have to go ahead. The only way you'll get through that is if you're either hate the problem enough to be like, I'm gonna be the one to solve this, or you love the solution so much, or what you want to build so much that's pushing you too. And it's those people who can mix and balance between the emotional guiding force, but also have the skills as an operator and the experience to guide them through obstacles and not take shortcuts and guide through that, really make it out. And what kind of drives me crazy is there's no infrastructure really supporting how to structure people's thoughts. You know what I mean? Like everything we're guided towards is more of the mechanical, be a worker.
Okay.
Right? You go get a job.
Okay.
Your entire adolescence, that's what you go through, right? And anyone who starts these companies, it's literally up to them to go and get the skills, either by getting mentors or learning the right things, all that. Everyone's kind of working in their own kind of capacity. There's no underlying force guiding this, even though it's these innovators that's really been the guiding light of our economic growth.
So you're saying that even though we've had sort of the stream of innovators right here, even in Canada, there isn't something that you can tap into that says, it's some way that it's been systemized that you can tap into.
Exactly. Right? I mean, there's not, I mean, it's very founder focused, all this, but, and it's a lot to do with, looking back at our education system too, right?
Interesting.
I mean, we're moving into the fourth industrial wave where all these SaaS companies, especially these software is eating the world and taking away now middle management jobs. Yeah. Right? So the future of work is more creative. Like I strongly believe that the future of work is more entrepreneurial, right? Where everyone's more independent. It's funny that the co-founder of AngelList said this really cool thing. He's like, it's almost like technology now is reverting us culturally to a time where everyone was like hunting and gathering for themselves. Yes. Or like farming for themselves. And I think that is an era where, and there will be good things that'll come out of that era. You know, it's funny. I remember friends telling me that, you know, when things changed in Hungary and they left communism, right? There are a group of people that prospered because they hadn't been in the system long enough. Right? They saw capitalism, they started opening restaurants and starting businesses and buying up things. And then there's a group of people who just never
got over the fact that the system was like, oh, we're going to take care of everyone.
They don't know what that meant.
Even if it's from a meager lot that we're going to take care of you, we're going to take care of you, right? And I think that what happens with founders is that it's that second group, right? But coming back to that, I actually find that really neat that you think that doesn't exist. But isn't that what incubators and accelerators and places
so let's talk about that too. Let's look at access.
Okay.
Right. Generally, incubators, the vast majority of incubators are campus-linked incubators, run by universities.
Okay.
So you will have to have come out of a university environment to even be comfortable to approach these. So people who haven't gone through university level, right, don't have access. So that's a huge percent of the population is cut off from that. They think it's too academic streamed, and even people who graduate through universities, a lot of them don't even know that the incubators even exist.
Yeah.
It's only the top who are looking for it or academically inclined for it, that have been pushed by the system towards it, that are activated by it, right? So either they're hungry and looking for it, or like this. There's no methodology push them towards that.
Sure.
Right? So universities are going through this transformation right now. They actually sat on a review committee at UFD, where we did a study, right, across the university on the effectiveness of the hub, like here. And the thoughts were, the biggest thing is that universities like University of Toronto are thinking is that education is no longer a paywall they can put up. Their business model was like, here's this world-class education, here's all the research we have done to validate that we could generate smart people and we cultivate this people who can teach you all these things, but here's this wall you have to pay to get through, right? Like if you go on YouTube, like it's one of the things that amazed me, like Virginia Law School, Yale, Harvard, all their courses are out for free now on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I'm watching like the CEO of one of the top banks, right, went to Virginia Law School teaching how to do sales and saying obscure things that any baseline salesman will learn, but they're teaching it very hands-on, like very academically to these students who never had these kind of, never had these skill sets. They never had to like work hard or like hit that sales job on the floor to know the basics of it.
Yes.
And I couldn't help but thinking like, these people have the academic knowledge now is now libertized. People who can't afford or never had the opportunity to go there, and learn from the hard knock life, life, right? Actually learn from life, now have access to it, right? So me right now, I can go and learn from Virginia Law School, Harvard Law, but also from like things like Y Combinator. And I think that's kind of institutions.
I think there is an opportunity for that. And I think it's now happening piecemeal. Like you said, oh, there's a law school here and there are all of these, those online education things that everyone signs up for, but it's not
coordinated.
It's not coordinated. Yeah. But which is actually also a problem, because at the end of the day, a portion of it is also privately driven, right? Privately driven means it's engineered to meet a specific need. You said that, right? The pharmaceutical industry or the petroleum industry engineered this to meet a specific need. I mean, is that what we want too, right? But at the same time, I really don't see governments being the ones that can drive that. So,
exactly.
So, which is what happened in the past too, right? Yeah. So I think you may be right that there is a need for coordination at that level.
Yeah.
And I think that it'll have to be privately driven.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things
with
that
checks and balances. I don't know. I always say that though I have no idea what that means.
Exactly.
I like to say everything with checks and balances, please. Yeah.
Right. And this is the fearful part of it, right? So like when the third industrial revolution happened, 1920s, 1930s, and all people unemployed, everyone's like, all these jobs are disappearing to again machines, right? More physical labor machines at that time, right? Because electricity came out in bulk and mass production became a thing. Like everyone's like, where are these jobs gonna go? Yeah. But then these jobs were created, in essence, by the people, by the private industry that kind of formed around it, right? Which came back to build institutions, aka the schools, then later on the universities, to propagate itself. So I think it's gonna happen next is that these like software companies and hardware companies, their job next is to create a next layer of institution that can support everybody, right? Because I don't know if you know who Scott Galloway is from L2 Inc. He's a NYU professor.
Yes, yeah.
He has his own media agency online. And he talks about this, like the cost for innovation has actually gone upwards, right? And the amount of innovators have actually gone downwards. Even though we see it now more, it's more glorified because these are the companies that succeed or create disruption that became now the part of the culture zeitgeist now. The amount of actual people innovating has actually gone down. The amount of people starting companies in the garage almost does not exist anymore because the cost of innovation has gone up. And part of that cost is living cost, right? It's letting go of things, right? So one of the things that Canada's known
That's
for.
fascinating. So he thinks the cost of innovating has gone up because of living costs?
Because the cost of letting things go, right? So it goes back to this idea.
But the actual cost of innovating, you can say, has gone down in terms of
Exactly.
Yes. So
cost of innovation and access to innovation, access to technology, access to all these things has gone down and become more widespread, but the cost of access has gone up.
Interesting.
Like imagine being able to leave your job and
Yes.
knowing that your mortgage will be paid for the next 6 months when most people live paycheck to paycheck,
Yes.
or $100 bill will make or break them.
Yeah.
Right? Vast majority of people
Or wage increase as opposed to, you know what I mean, the cost of, I don't know, house in the GTA kind of thing. Yeah.
Right? The amount of people who don't have the training or the knowledge or the access or even like the self-esteem, right? To
But
even go out and do these
is there other
things.
statistics that show, Ravi, that they're sort of less, I don't know how you would even define this, less innovators per capita or less startups per capita? Is that what we're seeing?
So
I don't think so. Anecdotally, I feel like perhaps because when I was in a startup in Toronto, Eloqua, when we started like back in the day, it was hard to find other people to meet with for coffee that you could talk about marketing with.
Yeah.
Like people would always say, oh, you should find another, female VP of marketing at a startup. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a startup and a VP of marketing in the city. Now I could stand at our headquarters on Front Street, throw a stone and hit like 15
Yeah.
startups
Yeah.
walking by,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes when I do interviews, it's like, oh, our building is just 4 doors away. So I just think that anecdotally, it feels for me like everyone's starting a startup.
Absolutely.
And it's not just startup, small businesses. I mean, there was a time that if you wanted to like, even the cost of sort of trying things out, experimenting, let me, put out an idea and see how it falters. I don't have to hire a PR agency because now there are all of these people who are doing things as side hustles. So I almost think the beginning has become easier. And because of that, I feel like I'm always talking to startups. So I mean, that's great that Galloway has this great thought, but I'm just wondering if statistically we're actually seeing more people because of precarious employment, because of all of these other things in the marketplace, where companies are not loyal to them. You could be hired, you could be fired like this. I actually wonder if not just startups, but small businesses, there's actually more per capita, possibly.
Yeah. So here's the difference between what I'm saying, right? So this one stat that it really boggles me, right? So in Canada, even though we have 10 times less the population than the United States, right? We have almost 10,000 times less the economy,
Yes.
but we produce 10% more innovators per capita than the United States. And the reason is
Really? I did not know that.
So that's why like
And innovators across, we're talking pharmaceutical, whatever it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, all the things we're known for, like the telephone being coming out of Canada, right? Tylenol
Yes.
came out of the University of Banting and Bass Center, right?
Yeah.
Like all these things came
Health
out of
sciences
Canada.
that's happening all over downtown now.
And the
Toronto,
main
yeah.
reason is if you're 28 years old and you want to quit your job and start a company, right? You don't have to worry about using your health insurance for your family.
Got it.
So your new family at home,
Got it. Yes,
right?
of course.
That's a main factor why people
there's
are more willing to take that
net,
jump.
There's a net to catch you.
So there's more of
Yeah.
a jump, right?
Yeah.
There's people more willing to take that jump. So even though there's less of an economy to support it, less resources available, people will take the jump. They'll take that risk.
Yeah.
So Canada, as the way we structured it, allows for innovators to take a leap. So I'm like, how can we double down on this, right? How can we provide more security to allow people to take that risk to create these things? Because it does benefit us.
Yeah.
These companies that succeed do produce all this preposterous wealth, right? Look at like Skip the Dish. So one of my friends, a Tamil guy, actually is a director of product now at Skip the Dish, right, out in Winnipeg. 2,300 tech workers work out of Winnipeg now from Skip the Dish. They grew from 800 over the past year and a half, right? Because Skip the Dish was founded by 3 guys from Saskatoon. And Winnipeg was the biggest city around at the time for them when they're growing. And since then, they kept it there. And now they have sold the company. Just Eats actually owns Skip the Dish, I just found out. And I don't know, they had a parent company. And one of the conditions was based out of here. But they couldn't move either way because all their processes are ingrained.
Got it.
And now they've built this whole tech scene around themselves.
Which then, of course, spurns other,
builds a whole bunch of things around them.
Yeah.
So there's clearly a value. But imagine if those three couldn't take that leap because they had an issue, right?
I wonder too. I mean, you might be able to answer this better than I can because you have these kind of, I was going to say somewhat intimate conversations with founders. I also wonder though that if those benefits for some reason don't play out for everyone equally because, and I'm still trying to figure out why. I've heard all sorts of theories. I've seen the research why, you're still seeing that gap when it comes to women innovators and people of color innovators, right? Like it's, you know what I mean, right? Like part of the problem that has to be also addressed is also that we are letting, if we've all agreed that this is, if these skills and these abilities and these safety nets are available to a group of people, they innovate more, then why isn't it equal? There's something missing in the equation. And if we've agreed that when these people innovate, they provide us with economic benefits, then don't we have a huge missed opportunity that 50% of the population women and a significant portion of the people that are of varied backgrounds don't feel they have the same access? What is it? And I don't know what it is yet, but I'd be curious. Like I
think the biggest issue is self-esteem. I don't think we have any kind of institution that
really, Ravi.
Yeah.
You really think it's self-esteem?
I think sorry, not self-esteem. I don't want to put it like, oh, it's on them. I'm saying like the
one
esteem,
of the things.
I think the esteem to come out of the shell, right?
Yeah.
Because I've talked to so many people of color who be killing it professionally.
Yeah.
And like, why don't you take a leap to start your own company, do this? And it's just like, it feels like they're not good enough. Something inside them.
Yeah.
Because I feel like these minority communities are more likely to have a lot of internalized traumas that have not been dealt with.
Agreed.
And by self-esteem, I mean like
yes, I agree. And it's one of that's well put.
I think it's going to be this unrealized traumas that have been dealt with, that have not been realized yet. Yeah. And there's no institutions really to help provide this. And I think it goes going back down to this, right? I'm
going to tell you a story as you say that. So when I left the consulting company to join the startup, and you have sort of the pay drop and everything, and in certain ways, I was supporting a bunch of things in the family. My parents were stunned. They were like, you have this professional career, and like they thought I could have run away with the circus.
Yeah.
What's funny enough is that a friend of mine who I've worked with in volunteer efforts before, I have a tremendous amount of respect for her work, Anusha. I recommended that she come and apply and work for Eloqua, and she got a job. And apparently her parents also thought the same thing. It's like it was the equivalent of her, running away with the circus or running to the circus. So I think also for anyone who's immigrated to this country, who's crossed the pond, who's left behind a lot to come here, they just feel like, look, could we just
chill?
Could we just chill?
Enjoy
please do not start something, right? Like, could we just? I remember at one point when I was working in the consulting company, I told my parents, I said, because I wasn't really, I was single. I thought I have some funds instead of putting into a house. I said, maybe I'll buy a Tim Hortons franchise. My parents thought it was the worst idea ever. And now I think, I wish I had.
Yeah.
I ended up putting it into investments. You know how that goes, right? Yeah. But I think that so what happens is there's this messaging that tells us to work incredibly hard, produce incredible content, don't talk about it too much, get letters behind your name, networking, get letters behind your name, and don't really start something. Instead, just work within the system.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to kill that messaging. Right. So again, that's probably why you're running into capable people in all sorts of, that's just one theme. And I mean, there's still barriers within these spaces. But I think that's one theme.
And that's what I want to tie back into like that esteem building, right? So not self-esteem, but esteem building, right? The ability to be like, demand more from life than what's been given to you.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of people, especially immigrants, come in and they settle in and they're like, okay, you know what? I'm happy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, this is just great. Like, let's just keep this going. Or like they're still dealing with things to a point where like taking risk doesn't seem like an option, right? So when it comes
I
to
mean, if your family came as a refugee to this country, you think one generation later you're going to not still feel? Come on. Yeah.
So esteem building, right? Like one of the main things about that is that there's a surety of like you're gonna be okay. And that's why people who are like more established, aka their families have been here for a few generations, they understand the landscape, like, you know, they're connected, they have roots, right? The difference between that and people who come in as immigrants is that kind of esteem to like, this land belongs to me as well, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, like this ties back into like a solution. So have you been following Andrew Yang from America?
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, how can you not follow the American elections? It's like
Yeah.
well, like it's like its own reality show.
Exactly, right?
Sometimes I'm like, I don't think I'm following. I'm not working on any U.S. news stories. Why am I still watching droves of this stuff? Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
He's fascinating. Actually,
he's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because he provides a whole different perspective and seemingly a radical idea, but it's actually been proven effective, right? Like even wow.
Which idea was this?
So universal basic income.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
UBI.
Coming back to future of work. Okay. And I've really been on the fence, and I've had a couple of friends of mine who are in the tech industry say that they are shocked that I'm not for it. Like unabashedly for it. They're like, how could you, are you clueless?
Okay, let's go into this. What are your thoughts on it?
I have to really think this through because I have been criticized at private parties for voicing my thoughts on this. So I don't want to. I will say this way, that the more I read about it, I do think that we can't, that it's a must do, right? Like I don't understand how we're going to deal with this future that we're talking about without having that laid out. And apparently, you know, if you look at the research, the few pilots that have been tried have been actually quite successful too, right? But I think there is I don't think the idea is palatable.
Yeah.
Again, a guess, but from conversations I've had, to a majority of people outside of that group of people who are kind of looking at this future and going, I just don't know how else we're going to do this. Like, this is absolutely necessary. I don't know. How do you?
Yeah. So, like, when I first heard about UBI, it was actually from Andrew Yang. It's on the Joe Rogan podcast, right? So I first got introduced to him, and I'm just like, inflation, right? Like, I don't understand this model. Everyone gets money. Like, how does that work, right? Doesn't it drive up inflation and like drive down the value of money? Yeah. But he was explaining, and I started researching more about this. Actually, Dale, could we bring up like the origin of like UBI on this? Like, well, let's look into it, right?
What did he say on Rogan's show? Did he declare? He didn't declare it then, though.
No, he declared beforehand, but that was like the platform.
Okay,
I mean, Joe Rogan has like 4 million viewers per episode.
Of course,
so that's really where he came out. He like 12,000 followers on Instagram, and then after that, he's now at 200,000. He shot up, right? And so with UBI, like I started looking at, he introduced it, but it's actually been an old concept.
Yeah,
it's actually a very capitalistic concept. So the idea being that everyone's wealth, right, income starts at zero. Right, and it's kind of unfair. Some people have generational wealth. They have already this infrastructure built underneath them to support them.
Yes.
So they're unfair. They have unfair playing field. Right. So capitalism is really about creating wealth, right? Creating instruments of wealth, and most people don't have access to be able to create that. So with UBI is that everybody gets like a certain amount coming in, regardless of that, right? So it's not about.
I wonder if I actually heard this interview, because I feel like Joe Rogan may have said, yeah, but what happens when it becomes a basic for everyone? Like if everyone got 22K, suddenly 22K becomes meaningless.
Yeah.
And actually, I think he defended that quite well.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like this interview sounds familiar.
He did. Yeah. He did. Dale, I'm looking for a particular name. He's from the Chicago School of Business, known as like modern father of like capitalism. Like,
you know
he was
that there are a
supporting
couple
this.
of people that have done research on it, and I feel like, wasn't there a pilot done? There was a pilot done in Ontario City, I feel like.
Yeah, there was. Not in the city of Toronto. I think it was in Hamilton.
Hamilton. Okay.
So there was nations.
Which was just killed.
Yeah, they were killed when the Ford nation came through. But there are a lot of countries that are doing pilots on this, right? Germany, Europe, like across the world, like just testing it out. and the results have been pretty positive,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the idea is, so you give everyone like a consistent income coming in, so kind of a security net. So talk about institution building,
Okay.
right? Like this is money coming in regardless. So
Got
that's
it.
at least,
So there you go. So you're thinking it's again that safety net,
right?
right?
So see, I don't think you should call it a safety net, right? I think it should be calling an enablement factor, right? So this allows people to take risk at a different level. They know that they have income coming in, they're not going to starve, they have some place to eat at least.
Yeah.
$1,000 not going to get you much, but it'll get you something at least to exist, and that's guaranteed by the system. So it allows you to take a little more risk, jump. So you know that there's this waiting for you. This is the outcome waiting for you at the very least.
Yeah.
Right? So increases it from a base 0, negative scope, right? So people want to leave to go retrain themselves and actually become, let's say, a second, third career path. They can't do that,
Yeah.
right? They can take that leap, right? They can help with bills, help with this, right? Income coming in, and the whole thing is to make them think is like, hey, if there's a stream of income coming in regardless of what I do, can I create more like this?
Yes.
Because not enough people think like that.
Yeah.
Everyone equates labor with income. And I think that's what's going to be happening, especially fourth industrial revolution with the enablement of all these new technologies. It's more about what can you use to create income for yourself rather than what using your labor,
Yeah.
right?
It's interesting that you see it as kind of almost like an innovation play. I see it more as that there are a certain group of people that are going to be left behind, and I don't think that they'll be able to tap back into the economy.
Absolutely.
And I think the rate of change is going to be so fast. Like this isn't, the last time we went through it, at least it played out over a couple of years. Meanwhile, this is going to be so. A friend of mine who's in the tech sector in San Fran, one day we had this like really worrying conversation about it, and he says, he feels like it'll be like, 2028 it'll start, and then by 2029 it'll be here. Like he goes, it's going to be that rapid. And I said, I have exactly the same fear, and I just don't think that there will be that time for new roles to emerge as fast. I think and I'm not trying to make things sound really dark, but on those days when I have those conversations, I feel like you're suddenly going to have mass layoffs, or you could see someone over 10 years in their life retraining themselves for 3 careers. Now we're doing it. You and I are already talking about how hard it is, and we've done it as a choice. These people won't have a choice,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And the jobs that we're looking at are jobs that involve some complexity. How do you retrain really quick for that? So I do see it as almost like a protection, right? A thing to say that in order for you to actually live and feed your family, here's something till you find something else that can continue to feed your family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so like I think that these are kind of questions we should be starting to ask
Yeah.
and trying to figure out. And so thank you for sharing your thoughts on this. It's been great. Like before we wrap this up, like
Yeah.
I want to give a chance to like talk a little more about other things you've done,
Oh my
right?
goodness. Okay.
I know you're very involved with a group called Tamil Women Rising,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Dale, you can bring the website up.
So about a year and a half ago, I think the group is about a year and a half old. A year and a half ago, I was working on a lot of stories around the Me Too movement. And it was just shocking for me to realize that there were these women that I imagined that were in positions of power. At that time, I'd heard a story. There were multiple stories of women that were incredibly powerful in Hollywood. There was a woman that was a partner at a VC firm. Like people that I thought had immense power were talking about feeling powerless because they were women.
Yeah.
And it came as a shock to me. And I think I went through this weird period where I just felt like I should do something, but I don't know what. And I came across 4 friends who felt the same way and they wanted to do something. And we thought, well, why don't we make our effort, because everyone was working on a ton of things, our effort focused on the Tamil community. So that's what it is. It's an organization focused on helping Tamil women and their allies, it could be, you know, other people, other women or people who identify as women, work on advancing themselves in their careers. So it's by surrounding yourself by really ambitious women. We teach skills through workshops and programs that we hold, and we expose you to women who have done extremely well in their careers to say, look, it's possible. You know, you can meet Carolyn De Silva, look at what she's done, or you can meet this other woman, you know, who's done incredible things in her career. And it's been really nice because it's taken this kind of ball of not great energy, which is what I think is always good to do in our lives. When you have this terrible thing, just channel it into something useful or forget it. Don't walk around with that ball of energy if you can, right? And that's what this has been. And we do a ton of things. We have a book club that focuses on learning new skills and talking about how you can advance yourself in your career. We have speakers, we have workshops, ton of great things. And we do have an event coming up. I believe it's on March the 3rd, leading up to International Women's Day, where we put 5 senior women in their careers and 5 women who are kind of on their way up, put them on stage and get them speaking. It's called Let Her Speak. And it's to get them to kind of develop speaking careers and be out there, so that when any organization is out there thinking, you know, I'd like to get more women, they exist. Come and look at the number of people we've had speak at our events, and you'll know that they're incredible women that just need to be found, that would be happy to speak at your events, right? So yeah, so it's been a really lovely effort. And I'll leave you with one thought from this, is there is a woman called Carolyn Purcell that I speak to once in a while, who's a great energy in my life. And she told me this, and this is the energy I want to take into this group and everyone I meet in 2020. 2020, she says, is the year of the big ask. And when Carolyn Purcell of Toronto declares it is, Ravi. So this is the year. If you're going to ask for funds from someone, if you're going to do something large and ask for it, make it 2020. Work up your energy, focus on one particular month. Say March is going to be my month of big ask. Put it all together. 10 difficult, uncomfortable asks, just ask. That one person who you wanted to be your mentor that you never had the guts to ask. That firm, that you know, that investor that you think could give you some seed money, whatever it is, pick one month, go nuts. It's so uncomfortable. When you pull it all together, it won't be so bad. Yeah. And then chill and reward yourself because you did the big ask. But that's our energy going into 2020.
Absolutely. That's amazing. I mean, this is exactly like an institution that provides like esteem building.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
yes.
you
Very
encourage
much.
them to, like, you provide encouragement also, but a guidance, like a way to like measure their improvement.
Yeah.
Right? You break it down into goals, and most importantly, you provide a social element to it.
Yeah.
Right? And there are ways.
And you know what it's like surrounding yourself with excellence. Like, I feel like ever since I've met some of the women in the group, I feel like I'm not aiming high enough. Yeah. Which is what happens when you surround yourself with like people with the growth mindset.
Absolutely. That's what they say, right? When you are unhappy, when you want to go achieve something, go and find people who have already done that. Yeah. And just hang out with them, right? Yeah. The closest 5 friends make who you are. Yeah. Right? Because that's the energy you surround yourself with, your thought patterns kind of sync up, and you kind of pick up their habits as well. Yeah. Right? I mean, I've realized that too. I mean, a lot of ways like you can change parts of yourself. Like self-improvement is a thing. I don't think a lot of people look into themselves enough to be like, you know, I need to change. Yeah. How can I change
and you
better?
Still can, yeah.
Right? Yeah. And part of that is by actually surrounding yourself with other people, right? It's kind of interesting how the human mind kind of works like that, right? By providing yourself with certain type of people who project a certain type of energy, you can change your energy, change your environment, change your station, right, in life, right?
I mean, I'll give you an example. Carolyn De Silva, who we profiled, phenomenal woman working with Loblaw. Mm-hmm. We had 2 workshops. One was called How to Get an Executive Presence, Cultivating an Executive Presence. She signed up for it. I'm like, she is an executive, right? Doing really well. And then we had a workshop on how to plan for maximum productivity. Carolyn registers again. And I'm thinking, here is a woman with a growth mindset. She's achieved great things, but she still feels she can learn things, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And I'm going to get a recommendation from you for what you're reading now that is excellent, that we should put on our book club list.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I'd love to help, right? And I'd love to help you guys any kind of way. This is a really cool initiative you have going on. And I know how you talk to people. Like, you're always about building and sharing things. So again, thank you so much for coming here. And thank you again for just being supportive.
Oh, I love what you guys are doing. I love the idea of listening to more voices in Canada who are like embedded in innovation.
Perfect. I mean, can we expect anything like this from you, like a podcast or your own personal thing?
Gosh,
Like,
I
would you ever
don't
do
know.
it?
I have respect for you guys. It is a lot of work. I would love to do one. I think that it would be probably focusing on politics.
So we're
right?
toying with the idea because we have all the equipment and the knowledge
Yeah.
and even the people of creating like a podcast center. We have like like a literally a closed off office room,
Yeah.
and people to just come in and use it
Yeah.
because majority of the time our stuff is just lying around, right?
I mean, I would say in media, the one sector that is growing while others are dying is podcasts. They're investments. I mean, Gimlet got bought off. Did they get bought by Spotify? I can't remember. For money, like actual money,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So podcast startups are something to be. You're not in the you're not in that area. Like you're not going to be as valuable as Shopify, for example, but you're still worth something. So I think that that if you are thinking of starting a podcast incubator, all the power to you, because I think that small businesses can come to you, thought leaders can come to you, influencers can come to you, but also like media corporations can outsource to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I didn't think about that. Interesting.
A
Thank you.
business idea born right
There
here.
you go.
I love it.
Boom. Awesome. But okay, so let's shout out to a few things before we wrap out that you're already
Okay.
involved with. Dale, if you can pull up the columnist from CBC Radio. This is you're a part of this group.
Yes. So we have columnists that speak on different topics. Finance. I do tech. It airs across the country. So if you're listening to morning radio, Kelowna, Whitehorse, Calgary, wherever it is, you'll hear, my voice come up and say blah, blah, blah about some, AI or nanotechnology or whatever it is. But then we also have finance columnists, and you can always listen to. I post them on my LinkedIn occasionally. I should get better at that, but they're always there. And then of course, CBC Fresh Air is our Ontario weekend show. I'm so proud that they've asked me to be a guest host on that.
Okay.
So, a couple of times a year when Nanaba, who is fantastic, really well known in the Toronto scene, when she's not hosting, then I step on, and it's 3 hours of live radio Saturdays and Sundays. It's totally fun.
Amazing.
Yes.
That's amazing. Would you guys do any kind of content for like a Google Assistant or Alexa, those?
Yes, a CBC does. I mean, we have our news shows that air over, of course. But that's the thing. I mean, if you think about it now, voice is coming into the house, right? Are we saying the newspapers are coming into the house? No, voice is coming into the house. That's why I'm saying there are all of these signs that talk about how important podcasts are, because people are seeing these other signs. Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, Manjula, man, thank you so much for coming.
My
It's been
pleasure.
great. Guys, let's call this.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.